Good evening, everyone. Broadcasting live, October 9th, 2015. So today was our peace walk. Didn't really go as I mean, people were saying, oh, for a first try, but we really didn't have that many people come. And that's to say we got about 5 maybe, 5 to 7. And so basically no one really, because the 5 to 7 people were people who were already more or less, the point is it wasn't really a sign of interest. So there was some argument as to whether or not it's just the day, because tomorrow is the start of reading week, so everyone's going home at the university. And the reason I bring it up is we have to ask ourselves whether the university is really an interesting place to base like a meditation center around, a monastery. Thought it would be an interesting idea. I figured, university students, meditation, doesn't seem to go as hand in hand as I thought. The university students seem to be more interested in, alcohol, drugs, music. Everyone's got these earbuds, listening to music all the time, talking. Anyway, food for thought. Maybe I should move to Germany instead. One thing that's that teachers love to do to their students is shake them up. So here I'm going to shake up our organization and say, well, maybe we should just move. Show you all impermanence. Wouldn't that be fun? Probably not. The two of the people who came on the peace walk, one of the person who came on the peace walk, turns out to be a libertarian. And I didn't know too much about, well, I guess I knew, but I never heard from a libertarian before. And then the most bizarre thing happened. His twin brother arrived. And one of them sat here and one of them sat there. And they started talking to me about libertarianism, and they were finishing each other's sentence. Twins. They looked identical. Identical twins. So we had an interesting conversation. They seem to think that nature's got a pretty good idea about just letting the chips fall where they may. It's interesting because I think that, well, yes, the worst, but also the best of us as human beings are those things that differentiate us from animals. I wouldn't want to be in the situation of kill or be killed. Might makes right. And where ethics are a matter of what's in one's own best interest, right? You're only ethical because it's, well, actually that's interesting, because in the end it is in your best interest to help others, but only because it's good for them, only because it's kind and it's what you would want, the whole golden rule thing. What would make you happy, you do for them. Because kindness is a good thing. Taking care of each other is a good thing. It's an interesting argument. But, regardless, we have an obligation to look after each other. We have to ask what's going to help, what's going to solve things. That's what we have to ask. I don't know the answers, but what politicians and philosophers and citizens of the world, we have to just look in the right direction. We can't think in terms of competition, the idea of a free market, as though the market were what was most important, right? As though our commerce, economy was most. Economy is not most important. The society is. People are. Our everyone's well-being. Well, well-being anyway. One's intentions towards one's fellow men, fellow humans. Anyway, so the upshot of that is that I'm behind today because of the peace walk and then this interesting conversation. So I just did some walking meditation. Oh, and it's still my time for sitting, which what I was going to do is not talk and say, I'm going to do some meditation. So today is daily Dhamma. So this is the name for it, which means every day we give Dhamma. Today the Dhamma that I'm going to give is, let's say, maybe 10, 15 minutes of sitting meditation, and then we'll see what happens. So if you've done meditation already, good for you. If you haven't, here's your chance. We can meditate together. Probably just 10, 12 minutes left. Good evening, Robin. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Bhante.
What do you think we should do tonight? I don't have a Dhammapada prepared, so we're not doing that.
What's the quote? We haven't done a quote in a while.
Do we have a bunch of questions?
I think so.
Why don't we just go ahead with some questions?
Okay. Sorry, I just have to find the start of it. Is playing poker professionally immoral?
Playing poker is considered, playing poker for money at all is considered to be a path to ruin.
Really?
Yeah. Abhayamuka. And you can identify these things by the attempt to make money without working for it. You could argue that the stock market is similar. I think you could even argue, I would argue that copyright is to some extent unethical, like living off of royalties.
Is that considered a form of stealing?
No, not stealing. But I mean, like if I live off royalties, it's nothing to do with the labor, it's to do with the monopoly, right? I have a monopoly on these ideas because I thought of them first, kind of thing. All that kind of patent and copyright and etc. etc. That's actually a long shot, but it ties into the idea of trying to make money without working for it. You know,
I see.
without deserving it. Poker has got to be bad karma. Oh, so you're asking? Let's say, could poker be considered stealing? No, not exactly. Definitely not stealing, but it's got some of the same unethical qualities. You didn't really deserve the money. Your intention is to manipulate, gamble. I guess it's the whole aspect of gambling. Because you could argue that poker is about manipulating each other, poker face, etc., that kind of thing. But it's bad in another way. I would say manipulation. It's the antagonistic aspect of it. But gambling is one of the big aspects of gambling is the laziness involved. Expecting to just get rich without, just for no reason. It's considered a bayamuka, and one of the reasons that I can see for that being like a path to ruin is because it makes you lazy. You're thinking, people who buy lottery tickets, say, right? So this is the classic gamble. It takes away some of your impetus to work hard and to do the right thing and so on, because you're constantly in the back of your mind, you've got this plan. If I get rich, and you dream about that and so on. And so to that extent, it leads you to work less. The argument could be you're less ambitious. Not that we should be very ambitious, but the point being, if you're not ambitious at all, it leads to ruin. You have to be hardworking and keen to do your job properly to make money. And so from a worldly perspective, gambling erodes that. Of course, there's much more obvious reasons. When you really gamble, like in poker, you wind up losing. The potential for great loss is great. And the thing about gambling is it's addictive. And even when you do win, the tendency is to go back until you lose.
Greed.
Yeah. All around problematic, I would say. Now, there are arguments could be made that some aspects of it are, no, I don't think so. I don't have a good argument for it. It's not real, true, good, honest labor. You're not doing anything. You're not performing a service for anyone, you see. There are many aspects of secular worldly society that are too complicated to really work out, are they good or bad. The Buddha called them white and black. Poker I don't see as very white and black. It's more black. If it's just for fun, just with chips, well, then you could still say it's black in the sense of it's addictive as a game. It wastes your time when you could be meditating. It leads to ego, it leads to addiction to pleasure, but that's very minor. People who play poker with poker chips, like we did as kids, I mean, it's just a game. It's not going to ruin your meditation. It just puts a little bit of an obstacle up because it's a game, but not a big deal. But when you play for money, there's some bad aspects to it.
Yeah, if you win a little bit, you definitely get greedy to win more.
Yeah, I mean, if you do it socially, it's just still just a game. Right? Oh, let's play poker and risk some money. Like when people go to Vegas, they bring $1,000, $2,000, and they blow it. It's just fun. It's still black, but it's very light gray. No, not light gray. It's just small black, very small, like just not a useful thing. But it's just a waste of time, I guess would be the worst you could say, and a waste of money. But it's another thing. But when you do it really trying to make money off of it, it's not really a good way to make money, I would say.
Thank you, Bante. Can a Brahma become an Arahant?
Apparently not. They aren't able to see impermanence, suffering, and non-self.
Are Arahants incapable of practicing samatha meditation?
No.
Because I think we talked the other night about how their concentration is so good, right?
Well, I guess there's an interesting idea, because they see ultimate reality so clearly, are they therefore not able to see concepts? No, an arahant can see concepts, can think in terms of concepts. I suppose it's interesting. But no, they can see. It's an interesting. You could make an argument. I mean, I don't know exactly how it works, but there's no reason to think an arahant couldn't focus on a concept. You might argue that it's not really samatha because they have clear insight into the experience, but they can still enter into the samatha jhanas.
I hope I don't sound arrogant or bragging with this question, but do you think it's possible to enter cessation while on antipsychotics? Because I'm on antipsychotics, and I think I entered cessation for a moment a few months ago.
It's a good question. See, the whole idea about drugs is they do not affect the mind directly. But the reason for taking the drugs is because you can't handle the experience. So it's more to do with the mind states involved in taking the drugs. Yeah, because the fact that you need to take antipsychotics suggests that you have probably violent reactions to things. And by violent, I just mean strong reactions to experiences, which the experiences themselves might be more violent than, or more extreme than ordinary people. So they warrant, well, they are more likely to produce violent responses or extreme responses. But still, the fact that you would give rise to the responses, I don't really know. The experience I've had with people on antidepressants. I guess I've never really had experience with people on antipsychotics. But the experience is generally, it appears that they are hiding behind it. And I don't mean that in a sort of judgmental way, but in a sense that it tends to make them incapable of facing the experience. Sometimes the experiences are really worse than most of us have to deal with. So most of us would probably hide if we were in that situation, but hiding nonetheless. And it sounds kind of cruel, it's kind of judgmental to say that, but it's sort of the sense of not actually facing the experience. So if you could argue that a person on antipsychotic is still sufficiently able to face reality enough to enter into cessation, then you might have an argument. But an argument could be made that they're taking the antipsychotic, it's a sign that they're not able to face reality, their reality. And that inability to face reality is going to disrupt their practice. Especially because the antipsychotics are probably more comfortable, and so you get comfortable in the state that they provide. Don't know. Again, I've gotten in trouble. People have gotten very upset at me for saying these sorts of things. So I have to qualify it with that I don't really know deeply, and it would take probably a lot of experimentation. But I do know that the best way is to be under a qualified meditation teacher and just go off the drugs. And I really feel that that's possible. It's just, practically speaking, it can't happen because liability and insurance and so on, criminal law even. I don't even know if it's legal to. You might get in trouble with the law if you said that to your students. You're not a doctor, right? Anyway, certainly a civil case is angry parents, right? But in Thailand, that would be the thing. In a country that didn't have these sorts of qualms about allowing religious teachers, it's dangerous, really. Allowing religious teachers free reign over their students is dangerous, I agree. But there are countries that allow it and would never think to prosecute or sue a monk for telling a student to go off medication or do lots of crazier things. But like if I was teaching in Asia, it would be natural. It would be, yeah, okay, that's what monks do, is they tell you to stop taking drugs and I'll lead you through these experiences. Sure, they're extreme, but we can learn to deal with them. That's our theory. It might be wrong. We might be deluding ourselves, but I think even in extreme cases, people with schizophrenia, I really think I could personally would have a good chance of leading someone through the experience of schizophrenia. I've never had the opportunity and probably never will, because unless I go back to Asia. I've talked to schizophrenics. There was a schizophrenic monk, really crazy guy. But he wasn't taking medication. He believed that the government, that somebody had planted a chip in his brain, and he had gone to have brain scans and they hadn't found anything. He paid like lots of money to have these scans. And yet I asked him, yes, I still believe. And I said, well, it's ridiculous. Yeah, I know it's ridiculous, but I still believe it. It's kind of something like that. I mean, along those lines. So we talked about meditation, and I got him to understand a little bit of what I was saying. But he would never have put himself under my tutelage. I think if someone did, I don't feel uncomfortable leading someone through that. I don't feel unqualified. So I mean, that's not really bragging. I mean, it's just that this technique is not, it's not simplistic. It does work and it can be put into practice. Maybe I wouldn't be a good teacher, but I think there are good teachers out there. Because I can't say whether I'd be able to, but I think there are teachers out there who are really qualified to do that, and this technique can do it. So I guess that's more what I should say. I don't really know enough about antipsychotics and so on, but certainly it seems like a step in the wrong direction. I mean, reasonable if you're living in society and don't have a good meditation teacher, but doesn't mean you can take them and become enlightened. You certainly can't have your cake and eat it too. So it's a question of whether that's what's happening when you take antipsychotics and then try to practice meditation. It certainly seems like that's what it is. It's trying to have your cake and eat it too.
Bunde, is there any branch of the medical field that really respects meditation or uses meditation, in a way that combines medicine and meditation?
I don't know. Well, psychology has taken a lot of stuff from Buddhist and maybe even Hindu thought.
It seems like it would be a good combination for some things.
Psychotherapy. What do you think, Robin?
About what?
What if we were to find a place where we could have a bigger center for less money, not next to a university, because really we've much more interest and support internationally, right? So if we had I guess the whole idea here is that we can find a local community, people to work, come to the monastery and support it. I think that's still possible here, but that's
Okay.
really what we have to see whether we have this ability to create a community. Stefano is here tonight, and he's been really helpful. He swept all up the stairs and so on. So that's really what it is, right?
Definitely.
It's just a bit surprising that the university isn't. There's not more interest in a Buddhist organization, and maybe it's just too early. But it seems everyone's very, very wrapped up in their studies, and when they have free time, all they want to do is party. It's kind of the sense that I get. That's also what I remember university.
Yes. Is there any difference between being interested in Buddhism and being interested in meditation?
You mean, is there more interest in meditation?
Yes, I remember you said there was meditation being offered in between classes. Did you have a chance to check that out?
Meditation already being offered, you mean?
At McMaster, yes.
Yeah, there's meditation. There's one guy teaching yoga and meditation. I went to his class. He had about 8 people, six people, I think. Which, for something that is sponsored by the university and a university of 10,000 people, to get six, not really a good sign.
It's a small group.
Yeah, not really a sign that it's a necessary component. Lots of people going to the gym, lots of people going to work out, and it's a thriving place. But 6 people came to and then my meditation, 5, 10 people. It was kind of neat. When we were on the lawn, people came. Anyway.
Yeah. Things take time when something's new.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. It was just a question of maybe, if you plant a seed, you have to wait for it to grow. That's true. But if you plant it in sand, you can wait as long as you want, and it's never going to grow. So the question is, what is this soil that we've planted our seed in? That's the question.
Hmm. And how is the community apart from the affiliation with the university? I mean, the community itself may not be sand.
You mean the local community?
Yes.
Actually, kind of neat. Kind of neat. It was just a question of, well, if that ends up being the answer, then why are we right next to the university? Maybe I don't need to be going back to school. Maybe that was a mistake, really. Or, it was an interesting experiment, and it was just a question. This is an experiment. Anyway, something to think about.
Did you have someplace in mind? You said bigger place for less money.
Well, this is a fairly expensive area because it's right next to the university.
Oh,
You know, we could most monasteries, like the other group, the Ajahn Chah group, they buy. You know, they have big sponsors and so on, but they get places that have acreage, right,
yes.
in the countryside. So they have peace and quiet. We have peace and quiet too, but we don't have the external peace and quiet. But they do a lot more samatha, so for them, peace and quiet of that nature is important. No, I don't mind living in the city, really. It's nice to be close to people, close to potential, you know, like the idea of the alms round. You should be near enough.
Yes, being way out in the country, without a lot of people around, that can be.
It changes the dynamic. You then require people to come and bring you food all the time, or a cook or so on. Right now, I'm almost going on alms round. It's just a little bit. It's like the people who are giving me alms are proxies. It's not even the alms round so much, but that's the sort of the model suggests that we be close because it goes the other way as well. If you're close enough to go on alms, then you're close enough to come and learn from. If you're out in the country, it again changes the model for what the monastery is for. Is it just for training long-term monastics, or is it for people to learn the Dhamma on a daily basis? Where talks are being given, where you can have day courses for people to just drop in. Like next week, people are going to just drop in. Shouldn't discount it yet. We have a few good people.
Yes.
I was on the radio this morning. That was fun.
Oh, how did that go?
Did you see the interview I posted?
I did.
Posted. Right?
I accidentally worked a 12-hour day at work today. It was a was a long story.
More of the day than I have.
I was supposed to work late hours today, and I forgot and went in my usual 5 a.m., but I
Oh,
still had to stay till 5 p.m.
uh,
So it was quite a day. But so I didn't hear anything or see anything.
so did you just meditate for 4 hours?
No, I had to work the 12 hours. It
Oh,
was it was
how does that work?
well, I'm salaried, so I just have to do what I have to do.
Oh, I see.
So I was allowed to come in later because I was going to stay until 5, but I
Right.
forgot that I was allowed to come in later, so I just went in at my early time.
And
And
once you get there, they force you to work? No,
well, we had a
you're not
busy day, so
forced. I see.
I'm the manager, so I didn't feel good about just leaving people, when we're having a busy day, so I just stayed and worked, and it was a long day. But but I wanted to ask, in your new community, what's a way that you can find out in your community if there are people who would be interested in if you went on alms round to them? There may be Buddhists right in your neighborhood, but how would you find out a thing like that?
Well, you'd have to meet them. And because there's this Thai woman who was here tonight again. They came to support, and tomorrow they are offering me lunch, so they're bringing it here. But if they were close, because I know them, I could go to their house. The way the Ajahn Chah group is doing it is they just go out into the village, or go out into the city or the town or wherever they are, and people get confused in the beginning, but eventually they're able to explain, and people find out about it.
So they just kind of walk around to be visible so people will know there are monks in the area.
Yeah, I mean,
Mm.
there's something to that.
Mm.
Not so. I've done that before, but it didn't feel somehow. I think there's not enough awareness, and I don't wouldn't feel proper without raising the awareness first. So I think I'm more comfortable at working the other way, waiting until there are people who say, "Well, what would I need to do to offer food?" I said, "Well, I can come by in the morning." Like so it would be someone who has been practicing with me and said, "Is there anything you need? Anything I can do to help?" Well, I need food every day to live. And they might say, "Come by my house," and I might go by their house, and then it would grow like that. And that shouldn't be how it has to work, but that's because in India people understood, they had the idea to offer food, or they knew that people did, and even if they didn't want to, they saw it and they said, oh well, there's someone going on alms. If I go here, there's already the idea that I'm an anachronism, or a fish out of water, that I don't belong here. Why are you wearing that? Is it a costume? And so on. And so that's the result of it. The result of it would be, really a wacko. You're really doing something that doesn't make any sense.
But it
So
does. Because if you
until the awareness is raised about, see, I don't think it does in this society, and until there's some measure of awareness raised. Because in this society, people don't do that kind of thing. In India, they did that kind of thing. There was a religious sense of, didn't matter what religion you belonged to. It was kind of the thing. If you're a religious person, people didn't give you money, but they would feed you, which wasn't a big problem. Wasn't a big, nowadays, what do we know in this country about religion? Religion, you pay your priests, or you give a percentage of your salary, or that kind of thing. That's our understanding of how to support religion. It was different in India. It was more direct towards food. We don't really have that. I mean, I agree, it does make sense, but do you get how it might not make sense in this society, or do you think I'm I'm underestimating?
I think you're probably underestimating the impact that you have because, while it may be the first time someone ever sees a monk, person may not know anything about monks or Buddhism, but you're a presence there. So I'm sure you've sparked interest, curiosity, and you
Well,
don't know.
that's the point, is right now sparking that interest. But without that, to just go into a society, or society, and walk around on alms, you know that no one's going to give you alms. I mean, theoretically, unless, as you say, there are Buddhists in the area. But given there are no Buddhists in the area, no Hindus or Indians, well, even Hinduism doesn't do it anymore, but let's say Jains who are a bit familiar with that. But even still, let's say no Buddhists in the area, then you know that it's a futile exercise. They know that it's a futile exercise. They know that you're not going to get any food, and they know that you're doing it to raise awareness, right? Which is not what an alms round is for. The alms round is not to go in and advertise yourself. The alms round is to go in and see whether anyone's offering food. That's sort of the problem I have with it. If you know that there's no reasonable reason to think that anyone's ever going to give you food, and your only reason for doing it is to raise awareness, I don't think that's proper. I mean, I'm uncomfortable doing it that way. I'm more comfortable with raising awareness first in a society where there is no such awareness, to the point where people might think, yeah, well, that's a reasonable thing, and support him.
I was actually talking about two different things. Like at the university, I'm sure you're sparking curiosity and and people wanting to find out more. In your area, I'm more so wondering, there could very well be Buddhists that you just haven't met, connected with. I'm wondering, your supporter Jeff was talking about Meetup as far as a way of letting people in the local community know when you're having a day of meditation, for example.
Yeah. Well, even still, like, I wouldn't want to do it until there was an argument that could be made that there was a potential for getting alms. I don't want it to just be a futile exercise to say, hey, look at me, so that eventually it becomes a means of encouraging people to give alms. I mean, that can happen, and it does happen, but it shouldn't be the reason. We shouldn't just go saying, oh, well, I'm just trying to make people look at me so that they give me alms. I mean, that's a crude way of putting it, but it's sort of the feeling that I would get from that. So, yes, there may be Buddhists in the area. Once I knew about that, even still, you still have the problem that most of them are not in a position to give alms. Why? Because they go to work. So until you get into that, so it's getting absolutely. If I knew about And that's maybe an argument that could be made. That's the question you asked, right? Just going, but I wouldn't want to go through that wouldn't be enough. The idea that there might be Buddhists in the community. If I was living in Thailand and it was, let's say it was, I was living in the hill tribes where people were all Christian, but I thought maybe there are some Buddhists in this village, and I had a reason to believe that there were Buddhists in the village, then I would be able to go through because um, I think, well, the Buddhists will put food in my bowl. But here you can't do that because here the Buddhists are mostly going to work and aren't looking out their windows to see if monks are coming. You know.
No, you'd have to know that someone was there and someone was home and prepared and so forth. But
Yeah. So I think it's going to have to work in that direction if it happens.
it's just interesting. We don't really know who lives in our neighborhood. Um,
Mm.
Interesting thing happened to me this week walking home. I happened to spot one of the other people that goes to Watlow that I go to, which is an hour away from here. It's an hour's drive away. But there happens to be a man that lives on the way that I walk home from work. And he gave me a book yesterday,
Oh
which
no,
was really nice.
as a
It was
A
just,
Lao person.
yes,
Mm.
yes.
Yeah, and that's a very good point that you make. It's something to think about, and not just for that, but just in general for creating a community. And another thing is, well, and it's already happened. You know, that's a really good point. I guess just the point there is, as I said, then maybe the university shouldn't be the focus. You know, it just seemed that university students were really going to be interested in meditation. It's not yet apparent.
It's a big university, though, and maybe somehow it just hasn't
Absolutely, that's a definitely still hasn't gotten
just
there.
yeah, just hasn't somehow reached the right people, but in such a large population.
It's a good argument. Yeah, you'd think so. That's a good point. A lot of people, concentrated space.
Yeah.
Well,
School's only been in school's only been in session for what, about 6 weeks now?
hmm
Yeah, early.
yeah, not throwing it away yet, but the other thing is university students come and go, right? They're here for 4 years and then they disappear. Theoretically, although in the greater Toronto area, they don't go very far.
Are there a lot of international students at McMaster, or is it mostly local?
It's hard to tell. Um, I think there's a fair number of international students. I think it's got a fairly well-known business school and a medical school or nursing program. So you get I think a lot of immigration for that, a lot of visitors for those programs. I think I don't really know. It's amazing the ethnic diversity, but I think most of the ethnic diversity is still Canadian. It's like the number of burqas alone. Burqas, is that the hood that they wear or the burqa, right?
No, a burqa actually
It's
goes
like this.
over it goes over your whole head.
uh,
That's a hajib. I always say it wrong.
mhm.
Hajib or
Number
habib.
of people wearing hajibs or these shawls is significant. Um, Number of Asian people, you know. I'm starting to learn to tell the difference between different countries in Asia. I mean, I don't think it's fair to say that it's racist that we can't tell the difference or so on, but because I can't tell the difference between European countries, right? But actually, there is somewhat of a difference between a Korean person and a Chinese person. And I'm only getting that because now I'm seeing them side by side. Whereas when I'm with Thai people, I see only Thai people, and actually Thai and Cambodians don't look that much different, but you can see the difference. Anyway, we're kind of off track. This isn't really Dhamma anymore.
True. Okay, back to questions. Bante, how do you note the abdomen when sitting? I'm tripping out on expanding and contracting, used to just rising and falling. but it is not clear. I think I read that wrong. How do you note the abdomen when sitting? I'm tripping out on expanding and contracting. I used to just use rising, falling, but it is not clear. So I think he means the words expanding and contracting instead of rising and falling.
Well, it's not always clear. I think it's probably a temporary condition that you should acknowledge because it'll change. I mean, if you've never been able to note the rising and falling, then you have a problem. You should maybe start by lying on your back in that case, or putting your hand on your stomach. But if it becomes difficult at times, then, or is he talking about the words?
I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Simon, but a week or so ago we were talking about it would be more proper to use the words expanding and contracting because they're more, they actually are more accurate. So I think that's what the question is about.
Well, if you're a native English speaker, rising and falling makes sense. Otherwise, it probably doesn't. In which case, you might be better off using native language. But they're just words. Once you get the idea that this is rising, this is falling, it does work. I mean, either way, if this is rising, this is falling, it's objective. You're not saying this is good, this is bad.
So if a person was just having trouble saying expanding, contracting, rising, and falling is fine.
Rising, falling, fine. Expanding, contracting is fine. Eben, sinken, pong, na, yup, na. Ode, pide. Apparently that's Burmese or something. Bim, bim, hekilim. That's Sinhalese. Gonfler, dégonfler.
Bhante, isn't it more difficult for a mother to follow the path of enlightenment? Women generally have stronger attachment and emotions. Is there a purpose for this?
Women generally have stronger attachment and emotions. I'm not sure that's true. I don't know where you heard that or thought that. Robin, do you think you have stronger emotions and attachments than men?
No.
Me neither. But that doesn't say anything. It's anecdotal. Could say women in general do.
Yes.
I don't find it to be the case. Not at all. Men can be such wusses sometimes.
Yeah, men can be very attached. Maybe not as verbal about it, but very attached
I
nonetheless.
mean, culturally, women and men tend to be different in most societies. Don't find that so much in Canada or America or let's say Europe. But in Asia, it's quite pronounced in some countries. But even then, as far as ability to meditate and so on, Thai men don't meditate. I mean, it's a huge generalization, but look at the people who go for a meditation course, 90% women. Sri Lanka, it's actually more even, and it was quite a neat surprise to see men coming to meditate. But that's just cultural, you know. The only difference between a man and a woman is one physical faculty, which is called the male faculty or the female faculty. It's just one aspect. Either you're a man or you're a woman. That's it. The rest depends on your karma.
I think the only thing I might say about that question is if you're looking at someone leaving their family and ordaining, maybe that might be harder for a woman, maybe for practical reasons.
Well, that's what, and culturally. Well, and yes, there is that aspect of the fact that the woman has given birth to the child. That's what they're asking, right, in regards to a mother. That it is arguable. So that is a good point, right? It is arguable that the woman's going to be more attached to the child than the man. I mean, it's certainly not always the case, but there's an argument, no? Don't you think, Robin?
Yes, I think, for a mother, it is probably very hard to leave a family. For a father as well, but
But I guess the problem I had is it's not because she's a woman. It's because she gave birth, and had to nurse and has an intimate relationship with a child. That's just mothers and children. I mean, it's part of how we're biologically made. It's not that women are more attached to things, but maybe that's what you were saying.
And societal expectations too, that would just be not acceptable for a mother.
Some women don't feel the attachment to their kids, right? This idea of postpartum depression, I think, where they just don't want their kids, right? They just reject the child. It's probably a karmic relationship. Probably they have bad karma with that child. Be neat if we could see all of what was going on behind the scenes, right? Like we read in the Dhammapada and in the Jataka stories about what's going on behind the scenes, what happened in our past lives.
Yeah. Are mental images to be noted as seeing or thinking?
Seeing.
Bhante, could you share with us any interesting supernormal phenomena that you have come across in your meditation practice?
Well, I can't.
How is the concept of hope approached in Buddhism?
Hopeless. The height of humanity is hopelessness. When you have no hope, you're at the height, you're at the pinnacle. Hopeless.
That's probably not the expected answer.
Well, that's true. I mean, but it's literal. I mean, it's a play on words, really.
Yeah.
Because hopeless means there's no hope for you, or does it mean you never hope, right? But the Buddha used this play on words as well. In English, it just happens to work out well. Hopeless. You're hopeless. But it doesn't mean there's no hope for you. It means you have no hope. You don't hope, which is what you're asking. Someone who has no hope means they have no expectations. They have no thoughts about the future. They're living in the present moment. They're here and now.
You once spoke of your mushroom trip of having certain deities like a Viking come into your head. Would these be considered asuras?
I think they're just delusions. I don't know. Maybe, yeah, maybe I really was in touch with certain beings. I don't think so. That's an interesting idea. I had strange thoughts as a kid. Like I said, I've said I talked to God. This was before I was doing drugs. I really did. I talked to God. And he talked back. So yeah, that kind of thing was probably in my psyche. Mythology and gods and stuff. It doesn't mean that it wasn't real. This makes me think it probably wasn't.
Bhante, when teaching a student sitting meditation in person, are you able to tell the state of their mind by his or her facial expression? I ask because meditation in the West is advertised with a beautiful person with a serene expression, whereas sometimes my mind is pure, but when I watch myself back on video, I look far from calm. Peace be with you.
Well, and the opposite is probably true. The person who looks calm and serene might be having a horrible, horrible thought, right? So no, the facial features alone aren't enough. You have to watch someone carefully over the long term, and then you have to be discerning. You really have to live with the person. That's why I often say, don't look at other people so much. Don't judge other people. Watch your own feet. Even a teacher, Do the teachings work for you? Take them. When they stop working, then stop taking them. Be discriminating. Doesn't mean you should be very, very doubting of everything, but it means you should be discriminating and say, okay, I will try this, I'll look at it, and if it works, I'll take it. If it doesn't work, I won't take it. But I'm not going to go away and talk badly about that teacher, right? Or say, oh, that teacher, he does this and he does that, or she does this. Don't look at other people, their faults and their problems. Right, but that wasn't quite what you were asking. You're asking about as a meditation teacher. But I think it holds true. Is I would watch Ajahn Tong, and he wasn't. I mean, probably he's very good at reading people. But even still, it was kind of like he didn't really care. He didn't really want to. But it was based on um, such a confidence. You know, do it and it works. So someone asked him, "What should I do?" Do this. But he wasn't looking to pick out their faults or so on. It was a contrast for me because I had a teacher who was always looking and always trying to delve into the meditator's problems, and I don't know. For me, it drove me crazy, almost literally. You know, I was really getting wound up. I felt, and when I went to practice with Ajahn Tong, it was noticeable the difference where he just wasn't delving. It was like, do this and it works, and if you did it, it worked. If you didn't, it didn't work. That was it. It wasn't so much trying to fix people as it was giving them the tools to fix themselves, and then saying you do it or you don't. It's up to you. Which was so kind of liberating, you know. You open the door for people. You don't pull them in or find some way to coax them in, and that's refreshing for people, right? It sounds kind of negligent, but it's not really. It's refreshing. No one wants to be pulled when they're not ready to come, right? I'll go through the door when I'm good and ready. Well, then it's my job to open the door for you.
And then the other thing mentioned in the question, meditation in the West is advertised with a beautiful person with a serene expression.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's advertising. And then when you're looking at yourself, that's real.
That's true.
So we don't want to judge ourselves by advertising.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. People have the expectation that they should be serene. But the interesting thing there was the argument is that, well, isn't that what we should look like if our mind is serene? Because this person is surprised to know that even when their mind is serene, it doesn't look like it from on the outside. I think you have to say that if your mind is serene for long enough, it's going to change your facial features. You'll get less tension, you know, and I think you could definitely argue that.
Yeah, the opposite. When people are angry a lot, they get lines on their face and things. And Bhante, what did the Buddha mean when he said cultivation of skillful states of mind? Does this mean cultivating a mind that is free from the 5 hindrances?
Well, no, I mean, those are the unskillful. Skillful are the opposite of the hindrances. So it's the same thing, really, or it's the same act, but it's a different description. If you talk about cultivating a mind free from unskillful or unwholesome, then that's the freedom from the 5 hindrances. But if you talk about the skillful, you're talking about mindfulness and all kinds of wholesome qualities of mind. Kindness, generosity, equanimity, those kind of things.
Okay. Can you please address the 2 questions I wrote above as continuation to the question of the other guy? Okay. What if the gambling aspect is done away with by being really careful and disciplined bankroll management?
That's not really the point. That's why I avoided the idea of the fact that you're losing money. It's not so much about the losing the money, it's about trying to make money without really deserving it. You're not providing a service, you're not doing anything positive, you're not doing anything real. It's a silly way to try to make money.
Well, what if the poker player does an immense amount of work to study the game and improve his or her skills?
Yeah, it's still a ridiculous aspect of society that we don't need. It's encouraging other people to gamble, encouraging other people to be manipulated. You're trying to manipulate other people, at least insofar as you convince them that they could win, when in fact you know that they're going to lose, or you hope that they're going to lose. The whole idea of hoping that other people are going to lose money. Did you ever think of that? And it's not just hoping that people come and buy something from you. It's hoping that they give you more than they want to give, because they don't want to give you the money. Hoping that they get in a situation where they are disappointed. That doesn't happen when you buy something. I give you money because I want that thing, and I'm actually happy that I got the thing that I wanted. I'm left satisfied. If I give you, if you come buying a teapot, right? And I say, look at this wonderful teapot that I have, and you buy it expecting to get a whole teapot, and then you get home and it's got a broken top. You're disappointed. Also wrong. Also bad on my part. I don't think I think poker is worse in that sense. You're disappointing the people pretty harshly, And you could argue, well, they know the odds going in, but that doesn't really mitigate it. I mean, it mitigates to some extent, but it doesn't change the fact that they don't want to lose the money. And if they come away, you having won, they having lost, they're disappointed. They're not happy, saying, oh, well, good for him. I'm so happy that he robbed me blind. No. Okay, you could say, let's say this. Suppose we play professional poker where we high stakes poker, and we publicize it on television, and there's sponsors and there's all that. And at the end of the day, we all get our money back, right? But we get money from sponsors and so on. So it's interesting for everyone to see all this poker going on. Well, then you could argue it's still just entertainment, but at least it's better than actually taking people's money away from them. So then you could say, well, I did all this work and I'm the best poker player there, so I get the best sponsors and so on. Then it's just being a sportsman. It's like playing for sports, which also being a useless occupation is not really that wholesome, but at least it's not wrong livelihood. I would say you could argue that gambling is wrong livelihood for the reasons that I've outlined. In Buddhism, we're not that hard and fast about these things. I was thinking about this sort of idea, and maybe it's not related, but maybe I'm going way off on a tangent here, but the idea of it being anti-abortion, because I'm anti-abortion but pro-choice. I think that's where I stand. And I'm pretty much pro-choice on everything, I think. And that's where this idea of libertarianism comes from. Because people want to say, well, I don't think it's right to get an abortion. I wouldn't do it. But I don't think it's right that we impose our ideas of what's right on other people. So, especially in that specific instance where the other life that's going to be taken is not yet in our society, is not yet a part of our society where we have to have some say in it. So then we have to ask, are we pro-choice on regards to murder? If I want to kill someone who's in society, well, we see that as different because we have a society to run. So on the one hand, I would want to say, well, I don't want to force people to follow my idea of ethics. But on the other hand, this isn't about forcing people to follow my idea of ethics. This is about maintaining social order, which is a kind of ethics in itself, you can say. So all I meant to say by making that comparison is that, gambling, I'm not going to kick you out of our group if you gamble. I'm just going to say, well, you've got potential problems with that. That's what the Buddha did. He was very much pro-choice in a lot of activities. Because you want people to see for themselves what's wrong. And they'll never do that if you force them. But that doesn't mean forcing is wrong, like enforcing a tax code. I still think there's something to enforcing a tax code because I think we have a responsibility to look after each other. And if someone's not helping to do that, letting people slip through the cracks, they're doing a disservice to the community. And once we get complex communities, well, it seems taxation is the only way to make sure that we're taking care of everybody. Because what's funny, they said, someone said, I believe in helping poor people through charity. I mean, if that worked, then it would be working already, because charity could be given all the time. But there are today people who slip through the cracks. And it seems to be getting more and more significant percentage of people. I don't know, but that's what I'm hearing. If that's the case, then we have to start looking at why that is. Why are people very, 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 very rich and yet other people are very, very, very poor. But that's even a global phenomenon. There's enough vitamins. We could make enough vitamins to ensure an end to malnutrition worldwide, as far as I know. Maybe that's simplistic, but we can do so much to combat malnutrition because vitamins are not expensive to make. But we don't ship them to countries that need them. I don't know whether my professor actually told us that one, but it's a pretty interesting example. I took a right to food course. He was a science teacher, but he taught us a lot about wealth inequality. Anyway, off on a tangent there, but some interesting aspects of why gambling might be wrong. I wouldn't kick you out of my society if you were gambling, but I might find some way to discourage it. Put a tax on it or something. I don't know. You put taxes on things, it's interesting because what it's saying is, we'll let you do it, but it's going to hurt our society if you do it. So, we need something to balance that. We feel that it's too harsh of us to forbid you to do the things you choose to do, but things like that. It's very complex. Like, these are things you don't have a right answer to, and you can't always help everyone, especially because their karma dictates so much of what they're going to experience. But what we can do is be fair and helpful, and be trying have the right intentions. I know that in a country where people are doing very, very well and other people are doing very, very poorly, there's something wrong. It leads to crime. The Buddha said this is the cause of crime, if nothing else. It's just unethical. Because people think, why should I follow the law? It doesn't work for me. I could go out and get a job and make slave wages, or I could go and break the law and live reasonably well. Anyway, I don't know. So that would be an interesting idea if gambling were the only way to make a reasonable wage. If so, what you could say about that is gambling will be on the rise, potentially be on the rise when other means of more wholesome income. First of all, when other means of more wholesome income aren't available. But second of all, when people lose their sense of what's right. Sorry, it actually sounds kind of harsh. Probably this person who's asking is a gambler. But I don't think there's any way of avoiding it. You're in conflict with those people who you're taking money from in a way that a person who sells something isn't. So I wouldn't want to, I couldn't imagine, having a poker game and knowing that I was taking other people's money. I did it when I was younger a couple of times. I was really happy because I won. I remember probably one of the only times I played a real poker game. I won other people's money. It was just like $10, $20 maybe, but we're playing for coins. But couldn't imagine doing that today, even that much, because everyone's unhappy. Why do you want people to be unhappy? How can you live with yourself? You want to give. Give away. Give up. And I think that's hard to do when you're taking. Really taking in a way that selling isn't. Selling is exchanging.
I remember reading something in one of the suttas. I don't remember if it was a Dhammapada verse, but it was about the problem of being a victor, and when you're the victor and someone is resenting you, and
just absolutely, that's applicable here. Winning breeds animosity, because the loser is not happy. It's after 10. No, but we had the meditation first. So we've been about an hour so far. I apologize. Tonight wasn't really scripted, and there was no maybe profound teaching. But we did get to talk a little bit about the Dhamma.
Yes.
I am still interested in the idea of society, though. What we can say from a Dharmic point of view about society. And I think we have to just remember, in terms of politics and economics, where we stand as Buddhists. the system itself is not nearly as important. Which system you choose, not nearly as important as your intentions. Because you might get it wrong. You might choose the wrong system. But you're much less likely to choose the wrong system for the right reasons. You're much more likely to choose the wrong system if you have the wrong intentions. If you have bad intentions, of course, you're going to choose a system that hurts people. Much more likely. You might get it wrong. You might want to hurt everyone and wind up helping everyone, right? Whoops. Ended up giving away all my belongings. Not likely, but you could conceive of such a thing if someone's really out to lunch. But much more likely that you're going to rob people with bad intentions. So if we set our intentions well, and that's really what is never talked about. Maybe it's not never talked about, but it isn't talked about nearly enough. We're much more concerned about, big government, small government. It's not. It's about good government, government that's meaningful and helpful, or things that are good and meaningful and helpful. Maybe it's true that government is a useless institution. I don't think so, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, we get all wrapped up in just wanting our side to win, too.
Yes, right. It's like a hockey game where it's like Coke and Pepsi. In America, don't you have blue and red? It's like Coke and Pepsi.
Yes.
Sometimes it feels like that.
Yeah.
Well, in Canada, we have 3 parties, so seems to be a little bit more democratic.
Well, now we have Bernie Sanders, and he's a socialist, so we sort of have
True,
3
he
parties.
is sort of a third, right? He's not either or. Well, I have to say, and I know we've talked about this, and I think you, to some extent, admire the guy, but whether you're not, you're going to vote for him. But the feeling I get from him is that he wants to help people. And to me, that is important. He may get everything wrong. Someone said that he's going to bankrupt the country. Maybe that's true. And maybe he's just lying through his teeth. Maybe he's just knows what people want to hear. It doesn't seem like that. And to me, that's what makes me like the guy and think there's someone we should have more of.
Yeah, if you can watch people, see their clips, year after year, and they're saying the same thing as compared to someone who just sticks their finger in the wind and goes with whatever the polls say, that makes a big difference.
Yeah. No, on the other hand, he's quite old, and he does seem to be a little bit stuck in his ways. I mean, like I wonder whether sometimes you do have to change, right? Sometimes situations do change, and you do have to, as they say, evolve. So there may be, I mean, I know that's standing with your virtues, which no, honestly, I think that's what he's done, right? He was for gay rights way back when. He was, I mean, he apparently was like predicting the stock market crash in 2008. If that's true and those kind of things, let's suppose there is such a person, even if it's not this guy named Bernie Sanders. I mean, sticking with your guns and saying we have to help everyone, and we have to, or at least we can't let people run away with all of the wealth and power. That everyone should have an opportunity. I mean, which is really the noble thing about capitalism that Buddhism would even admire. You put in the work, you get the result. That's what's supposed to happen. But it can't happen unless you somehow I mean, there was a big argument we had about whether you have to regulate in order to have a meritocracy, right? Do you have to regulate or not? And there was these 2 twins, which is really bizarre. It's like the same person talking to you from both sides.
Were they arguing with each other?
No, they were finishing each other's sentences. They knew exactly what the other person was going to say, and they would repeat each other's sentences. It was like stereo. It was really a unique experience.
Yeah.
But that's my point is, doesn't really, we have to have those talks about what is the right system of governance, but we have to be clear first why we're having those talks. Is it just so that the country gets richer? Is it just so that society prevails, society continues, that the human race isn't wiped out. I mean, I don't see that as the highest good. The highest good, maybe society, humanity being wiped out is a valid concern, but much more is our intentions. Are we doing this with other people's welfare in mind, or are we doing this with only our own welfare in mind, to the extent that we're willing to hurt others to bring about our own perceived well-being? Because that doesn't bring about your own well-being. It's the neat thing about the Buddhist philosophy, is that you can't bring about your own well-being while hurting others intentionally, or while knowingly hurting others.
There never seem to be many Buddhist candidates.
Yeah, where are they all?
I know.
Well, we Buddhists are unattached. Oh, I was interviewed by the Green Party. I bet I'm up on their YouTube channel somewhere. I mean, they were just interviewing random students, and I think I was random enough. They picked me out. I mean, bizarre enough, I guess, is they wanted to get all people from all walks of life. And they asked me, they said, okay, we're going to ask you, how do you go green? Something like, how do you go green? That wasn't it, but it was something similar to that. And I said, okay. And he started recording, and then he asked me, and I drew a blank. I'm like, I don't know how to answer that question. And so then he kind of explained it to me, and I said, okay, I got it. And I said, well, recycling is, I think, good things like recycling and respecting nature, and how nature is really where we still belong. It's quite jarring for us to have to live in the world with so much pollution, and it's not comfortable for us. It's not healthy for us. So nature is something we have to look after. So go green, as I said to him, go green. I'm very happy with my interview. I mean, I'd consider the Green Party. I don't know really what they stand for, but helping nature is interesting to me.
I don't know anything about the Green Party in particular. Some of the environmental groups are they get kind of violent though.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I think I would argue that it's a case of priorities. How do you say, misguided priorities?
Yes.
Poor prioritization. The environment can't be. At this point, it probably has to be higher on our priority list, right? If what they're saying is true. But that's only functional. It should never be higher than goodness. Should never be at the expense of goodness. We might say, well, we have to make some hard choices to save our, because if we don't, everyone's going to die. If that were the case, then yeah, maybe we'd have to make some hard choices. But that's just a matter of, it's still not, we would never prioritize the environment over goodness. So getting angry over the environment is clearly a poor prioritization. And that happens a lot. It happens with all sorts of causes, right? People get so caught up in their cause that they forget about the most important cause. At the end of my interview this morning on the radio, she asked me, "Is there anything else you'd like to say?" And so I said what I've been wanting to say for a while. I didn't say it very well in particular, I don't think. It's still kind of, well, I mean, I said what I could, but I said Buddhism, a big thing in Buddhism is goodness. And that's really what we're trying to do here. We're not trying to convert people. We're not trying to become big or famous. I didn't say. I just said I'm not trying to convert people, but we're trying to bring goodness. So we encourage everyone to come out if you're interested in these sorts of things and you think that it could help to bring goodness. That's all we're looking for, that kind of goodness, ethics. And it's kind of pushing the ethics thing, and I'm more interested in pushing that because it seems to me a lot of people are interested in meditation aren't interested in ethics. I mean, even in the sense of not drinking alcohol. I had an argument. Part of the argument was that alcohol, what were they saying? Sugar and caffeine are way worse than alcohol. So to some extent, it was an argument that we couldn't really have because we are on different pages. If you say to me that sugar and caffeine are worse than alcohol, then I know we're not on the same page.
Well, the effects of alcohol are worse than the effects of sugar and caffeine. But when it comes to giving it up, when I took my precepts for the first time, I used to drink wine every night. And after I took the precepts, I haven't had a sip of wine. And that was easy for me. But giving up caffeine, much harder. And giving up sugar, impossibly hard.
Well,
Still
we need
working on
sugar.
that.
We need sugar to live, but
We
sweets,
do need sugar to live, but we don't need chocolate.
right?
Yet I feel I do.
But chocolate's different. Chocolate is a drug, and it's addictive. Apparently, can be.
Yeah.
I never found it so, but some people. I think there was something that maybe women are stronger because of their body types. They're more strongly or differently affected by it.
I think women crave chocolate. That seems to be just kind
It,
of a
but no, but it seems to be I don't know. There's something biological about it, but that wasn't. I don't think that's a valid, or that would be a valid argument against what I was against, or that it's to say that it's worse because yeah, okay, so you're addicted to sugar. It doesn't mean you're gonna tear your clothes off and run around naked because you're eating too much sugar.
right,
And yet, alcohol, it doesn't take much.
right. But just harder to get under control because it's more pervasive. I mean, sugar is in everything, and
Sure, but what does it mean to be under control? Sugar's never going to make you kill someone. Well, hardly ever. Make you beat your wife, husband, beat your children, commit rape, sexual abuse, that kind of thing.
true.
I mean, alcohol, the argument was alcohol doesn't cause these things, but it certainly makes it a lot more likely that you're going to do it if you've got these. I mean, most people have harmful intentions in their mind. They're usually very, very small and minor, but if you do things like take alcohol all the time, they get a bigger say because your mindfulness and your shame and your that kind of thing are wiped out. So if you're an all around good person, alcohol's not going to do much for you, but it prevents you from being sane, really. It's the opposite of where we're going. But sugar doesn't do that. Coffee doesn't really do that. Coffee is a little bit, I find it makes you feel happier.
A little bit makes you feel happier, but a lot makes you feel kind of crazy.
Yeah, yeah,
If you really,
this is true.
yeah, if you really have too much
Yeah,
caffeine.
but you never hear of people taking too much caffeine and then going out and raping, or doing something totally immoral, do you?
No, no, it's more like you can't think straight.
Yeah, yeah. So
You're
you
just
could go
too
crazy,
wired.
but not the same as alcohol.
No, not in terms of evil, no. I might have skipped some, but here's one. Is it bad that I don't watch much TV and have no idea what's going on in politics and things?
No, good for you. Good for you. Um, I wouldn't so much, except it's interesting in terms of teaching and in terms of reaching out to people, because we have to get a feel for this is for society. I mean, I find sometimes I don't really know what's going on, so as a teacher, that can be a bit problematic. Like I was thinking on the peace walk today, I was thinking, what if someone came on the peace walk high or taking alcohol? Maybe they would. Some people think that that enhances your experience, and so it's that kind of thing that makes me want to know more about what people are doing, where they're at, what they're thinking. So I mean, I don't watch TV. I don't. We don't have a TV. I don't don't watch the news on the internet. But sometimes I hear about someone who interests me, and so I watch some of their YouTube videos. Actually, not that much, but I've watched a few videos of, say, Bernie Sanders, and I think, hey, here's a guy who appears to be really interested in helping people, and maybe he gets some stuff wrong. That's fine, and I don't agree with him on everything, but you know, I want to promote that idea of goodness. So that's all. I mean, I'm not that in the loop.
I
Uh,
don't watch much TV either, but I do follow politics because some of the um, political figures for the United States will drag us into war very quickly. And
right.
drag us into things that are
You could argue, I mean, I would argue it as a monk, I'm out of that, but you could argue that as a person in society, playing a role in the economy and that kind of thing, you have a bit of a duty to stay involved, a responsibility to cast your vote. So people are cynical about how much casting your vote means, but in an ideal democracy, a society, I think an argument could be made, unless you're a libertarian. I don't know how that works, but that really voting is probably a Buddhist thing to do. On the other hand, there was an election here. I mean, as a monk, I've sort of taken it that I won't vote on anything. But there was an election for the McMaster Association of Religious Studies. And at first I thought, well, maybe I'll volunteer to be on the exec. But then I found out it was pretty kind of involved, and you'd be a treasurer or a secretary. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to be one of those people. Then it was the election. I said, well, I'll probably come out to the election. I think I may have even said I will come out, which is kind of shameful because I never went. But I didn't go because I sat there and said, how could I vote for someone over someone else? What would that mean for the person I didn't vote for? How can you say someone is less than someone else? I mean, that's not what you're saying, but it's maybe it's not Buddhist to vote. I don't think so. I think that's going too far. I think it is important to be involved to some extent. I think it's much harder to be involved now than it should be. There's a lot of corruption, and your vote doesn't mean too much, and that kind of thing. It's all messed up, but doesn't mean that the idea of participatory democracy isn't good. We do it in the monastic society. We try to get a unanimous decision, and if it's not unanimous, then we try to figure out why it's not unanimous. But that's a kind of democracy still, right? It's a different.
What do you vote on in the?
Anything. It's one way of solving problems. We can decide to vote on it, but usually it will have to be unanimous. If someone says nay, I don't agree, then I think we have to talk to that person. It's like a jury, basically. We have to go until we agree, 12 people, like the jury, right? But we have to go until the whole Sangha agrees. I mean, that's one way. We could just have a straw vote majority, but there's not that sense. There's not that option. It's pretty sure it has to be unanimous. Or the dissenter just has to be quiet, which is probably more likely. What we do is say, if anyone sees, like it's when a person gets married, if anyone sees fit, let them speak now or forever hold your peace. It's more like that. So do you dare stand up in the middle of church, right? And so do you dare stand up in the middle of the Sangha? And mostly they don't even think about it. And if you did, you'd usually be in big trouble, which is unfortunate, I heard a story about this, at the end of the rains, we have to give invitation. We have to invite the other monks to criticize us about what they have seen us do, what they have heard us do, what they even suspect us of doing. They have to criticize us. We invite them. We invite all the other monks to criticize us. No one ever takes you up on the invitation. And I was talking to a monk from England, and he said, I've only heard one time some monk, no, he was there, I think. I've only seen one time where a monk actually took the invitation, and he criticized this other monk and said, during the rains you were doing this or that, or you were hard to admonish, I think was what it was. And then he got up, or the monks sort of got, at the end of the ceremony, the monks got up and they were leaving, and the monk who he had criticized picked up an alarm clock and threw it at him as he was leaving the room.
Whoa.
Yeah, and narrowly missed his head.
Whoa.
Yeah. Sorry, the kind of things you probably shouldn't hear about.
Well, there's something else to criticize for next time around.
Yeah, I apologize. That probably shouldn't have slipped out. But it's not. I don't think it's an offense what I just did. And even Mahasi Sayadaw would often talk about monks, anonymous. It's a good. Yeah. It's important. The biggest criticism we could have of the Sangha right now is that there's not enough criticism. We're not held accountable. We're not holding each other accountable. It's not that you can fault people. It's really hard, especially when tempers are flaring. If you do, you get an alarm clock thrown at you. But it's dangerous. There's the whole scandal in the Catholic Church. From what I hear, such a scandal could very well be present in the Buddhist Sangha. And maybe worse, I don't know. Really hard to do anything about.
Hopefully, what would be different is in the Catholic Church, there's a hierarchy that doesn't get broken. Is there a similar hierarchy in the monastic Sangha?
Not as strong. The Catholic Church is a very strong one, but there is a sense of hiding each other's faults. I mean, it has something to do with the societies, because a lot of Buddhist societies are still, you could say, underdeveloped, less organized, more corruption. So that's why the Catholic Church got in trouble, because they're in societies that have advanced to the point where they're organized enough to fight back, to say something, to speak up. Many societies you couldn't do that. You'd be the one who would get in serious difficulty if you were to bring it up. Anyway, this isn't all that helpful. Talk is cheap. We should focus on our meditation. So tomorrow we have the start of a 9-day meditation course. Some people are hopefully coming tomorrow. But throughout the week, people probably will be stopping in, only a few. And we'll just see where things go. But if you're in the area, if you happen to be watching now and for some reason are nearby, well, please do stop in the next week, because I won't be in school. It's a reading week. My plan is to, extra things is to, there's a few things I have to do. But, it'll give a chance for my own practice. Anyway, stop there. Good night, everyone. Thank you all for tuning in. Keep
Thank you,
practicing.
Bhante.
Thank you, Robin.
Good night.